In the following video, you can follow along while I process a food waste collection. This particular customer that I pick up the food waste from uses 65-gallon wheel toters for me to swap out. The first steps I have to take is removing the waste from the liners they use. While I'm working each liner, I have to keep an eye out for contaminants. Contaminants in this case would be vinyl gloves, plastic serviceware, and the like. I accept all organic waste. This includes meat and bones. The rule I go by is this: if it was once recently alive, it can be composted. Food scraps and yard waste currently make up 20 to 30% of what we throw away. Composting is nature's way of recycling. Here are a few reasons to get started today. Feed the soil without using chemical fertilizers. Keep food waste out of the landfills and prevent less greenhouse gas emissions. Conserve water by building healthy soils. Once I have all the liners emptied, they will be mixed with a carbon source. In my case, I use leaves. Food waste is primarily nitrogen and need to be mixed with carbon. I try to shoot for a 3-to-1 ratio of carbon to nitrogen. For every 5 gallons of food waste, I try to add 15 gallons of leaves. Later in this video, I'll be showing you how I mix everything together. It really isn't hard to compost, but the rewards are more than worth it. If you don't have the space or time, there are alternatives. One of these alternatives is curbside composting, which I offer. All of the food waste that I get is currently handled by hand without machinery. This way, no further greenhouse gas emissions are produced. Another benefit of handling the food waste by hand is a better end result. An end result that can be added to vegetable gardens. Let's go mix things up. Remember earlier I told you about a 3-to-1 ratio of carbon to nitrogen? These are the shredded leaves that I will be using. Leaves are rich in carbon, while food waste is typically high in nitrogen. Composting requires a balance of these two elements. The microorganisms that break down the compost pile need carbon for energy and nitrogen for protein synthesis. Leaves can also help absorb odors from food waste, keeping the compost pile smelling fresh. Leaves also help create air pockets in the compost pile, which is essential because the microorganisms that break down the compost need oxygen to survive. The resulting compost is a nutrient-rich soil amendment that looks a lot like soil itself. It enriches the soil with nutrients, reduces the need for fertilizers and pesticides, increases soil's ability to retain moisture, thus helping to prevent erosion by reducing runoff. It is simple to gauge the amount of leaves I need to add by the amount of food waste I have in the wheelbarrow. Just remember the 3-to-1 ratio rule. From start to finish, I keep an eye out for contaminants. You do not want to add any non-organic material to your compost. With each addition of food waste or leaves, you want to mix things up by turning it in. This allows the materials to be balanced throughout the mix and gives you a chance to break up any big clumps. The carbon and nitrogen in compost play essential roles in the composting process. Here's why. Microorganisms, which are responsible for breaking down the organic material in compost, require carbon and nitrogen. Carbon provides both an energy source and the basic building block, making up about 50% of the mass of microbial cells. Nitrogen is a crucial component of the proteins, nucleic acids, amino acids, enzymes, and coenzymes necessary for cell growth and function. The ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio for composting is generally considered to be around 30-to-1, or 30 parts carbon for each part nitrogen by weight. This ratio is important because if it's too low, too much nitrogen will be lost as ammonia gas, causing undesirable odors. If the ratio is too high, too much carbon, there is not sufficient nitrogen for optimal growth of the microbial populations, so the compost will remain relatively cool and degradation will proceed at a slow rate. Carbon-rich materials can provide other functions for the compost heap. Wood chips can help build structure, while other browns like paper and cardboard can help absorb excess liquid released from the breakdown process. High-carbon materials can also act as bulking agents, creating air pockets which help trap oxygen in the compost pile. So, mixing carbon and nitrogen in compost not only ensures efficient composting but also helps the environment. The recommended minimum compost bin size for hot composting is 1 cubic yard or 27 cubic feet. This corresponds to approximately 200 gallons, and a cube shape would take up a footprint of 3 feet by 3 feet. As you can see, I am using bins larger than that. The optimal temperature for hot composting is between 130 and 160 degrees. Temperature plays a crucial role in the composting process. Here's why. The rate at which composting occurs depends on temperature. Higher temperatures in a compost pile speed up the overall process. Temperature is an indicator of the activity of the microorganisms in the compost pile. These microorganisms are responsible for breaking down the organic material. The heat generated during composting is essential for killing harmful pathogenic bacteria, fungi, protozoa, worms, and other parasites, as well as weed seeds in the pile. Composting is an oxidative process, meaning it requires oxygen. The compost pile must be turned many times to maintain proper oxygen levels throughout all parts of the pile. Regulations by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency specify that to achieve a significant reduction of pathogens during composting, the compost should be maintained at minimum operating conditions of 104 degrees for 5 days, with temperatures exceeding 131 degrees for at least 4 hours of this period. Proper temperature control can yield a higher quality, nutrient-rich compost. By measuring temperatures regularly, you can tell how fast material is composting, and whether there are hot or cold spots in the pile. If the pile gets too hot, turning or aerating will help to dissipate the heat. Using a thermometer will let you know how things are progressing. Thank you for following along. I hope this video was helpful. Please subscribe to be notified of future updates.